Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear students, today we are going to talk about ethical values in Islam. It is chapter number 2 for class 12th. Ethical values or ethics may be defined as the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conduct of an activity. Or we may define it as the branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles. The ethical values or virtues or science of akhlaq or adab al-Islamiyah, it is a full-fledged branch of Islamic studies. In Islamic perspective, ethical values may be defined generally as good conduct, good character. We may also define ethical values in Islam as like good manners, adab, akhlaq, etc. The very foundation of ethical values in Islam is found in the Islamic religious text, the Holy Quran and Hadith or Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The motive force in Islamic ethics is the notion that every human being is called to command the good and forbid the evil in all spheres of life. In other words, it means to obey God, to submit before His will, and generally to follow Islam in all spheres of life. Islam itself means submission, surrender, obedience before the will of God. And when we submit before the will of God, we have to follow all the commandments of God, Allah the Almighty. There are certain do's and there are certain do nots. And Islam as a comprehensive way of life encompasses a complete moral system that is an important aspect of its worldview. We live in a world where good and evil are often looked as relative concepts. Islam, however, holds that moral positions are not relative and instead defines a moral standard by which actions may be deemed moral or immoral. Islamic moral system is striking in that it not only defines morality but also guides the human race in how to achieve it at both at individual level and as well as collective level. Islamic moral system emanates from its primary creed, that is belief in one God, who is the creator, who is the sustainer of the universe. And Islam considers human race to be a part of God's creation and as his subjects. When we say ethical values like manners, adab, akhlaq, etc., they are the positive qualities in a human being. There should be these are the qualities which a person should incorporate in his being, in his self, to become a good human being. You may call it these as universal precepts, universal concepts, because in every religion they are considered good. And Islam emphasizes more on this aspect of our life, that we should live a cordial and harmony. There should prevail harmony in all spheres of life. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "Verily, I was sent for no other reason except to perfect the noble traits of character." Muwatta Imam Malik. In other words, one of the Prophet's goals, in fact, the primary mission, was the perfection of how people behave. that is their manners, how should they behave towards other people, not among only in the Muslims, but towards all the humanity. How should our behavior should be towards the humanity, towards the human beings, towards different strata of society. As a religion, Islam promotes idea of good character, as is evident from its canonical texts. The Quran describes Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as being on exalted quality of character and refers to him as an excellent example, is uswatun hasana, which ultimately means that the religious and moral examples set by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are to be followed in letter and spirit, and they should be cultivated by the Muslims in order to construct a morally good character. Morality in Islam encompasses the concept of righteousness, good character, and the body of moral qualities and virtues prescribed in the Islamic religious texts. When we see the present world scenario where the humanity has been engulfed in a very traumatic situation, where whole world is locked down, there appears a medical ethics. How should people be treated who otherwise are COVID positive patients? How medical ethics can teach us about coronavirus in the present situation? How patients can be treated when we are told to maintain social distance? How can a doctor, paramedical staff, and other people who are related with these patients can behave with them? And the patient here needs support, he needs kindness, he needs sympathy, and overall behavior which is not stigmatic. Here you are dealing a human being, human life, who wants to live a normal life as before. I mean to say that these principles, these precepts, which are inbred in our being, in our existence, that should be incorporated in such a way that people on the whole, and they start thinking about it, that how should we live a life which is based on virtues, or in other words, which is based on fazile. That is to say that in human beings there are certain positive qualities which should be incorporated, which should be developed, so that the personality development becomes possible, and the negative traits, do nots, which we call as do nots, as the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden them, that they should be suppressed, and in a way that morally good conduct should be observed. And in this way there are certain virtues and there are certain vices which we have to discuss in this unit, which we call as fazile virtues, as fazile and razile. For example, here you have to discuss certain fazile, and for example, truthfulness. This is one of the virtues. Justice, modesty, trust. These are some of the virtues which you have which we like to explain here. And there are vices, for example, backbiting, lying, anger, and theft. We will be back with another lecture on these topics one by one. Till then, fi amanillah, ilalika, and stay home, stay blessed. Thank you very much.